Around 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the announcement that the league has suspended Draymond Green for Game 3 of the series between Golden State and Sacramento. For that moment there, the stomp on the chest of Domantas Sabonis, for which Draymond was ejected at that point in the game. About 7 minutes left of a game, Golden State would wind up losing. You see all the things that happened on the floor afterwards, and so now he has been suspended. The league did say the suspension was based in part on his history of unsportsmanlike acts. And so there you see the man who knows all, our NBA senior insider extraordinaire, Adrian Wojnarowski. So, Woj, let's go right to it. First of all, Woj getting up so early for us in L.A. to race into the studio and do this, so our endless appreciation for that. How did we get here? We all saw what happened the other day. I think most of us did not expect this news last night. How did the league get where they got with this decision?
Well, Greeny, a couple of things. Obviously, the stomp itself on Sabonis, that's where it begins. Certainly a retaliation to Sabonis grabbing his foot, his ankle, but I think it was seen as an escalation, right? The difference perhaps between, if somebody pushed you or shoved you and you threw a punch. So that was seen as an escalation, the stomp. And then on the court, before Draymond Green left the floor, the theatrics, the inciting of the crowd, that was part of it. And, of course, Adam Silver is sitting there in the stands watching this. And then, as the league said last night, Draymond Green's history. You don't get necessarily the benefit of the doubt when there has been a series of incidents through your career the way Draymond Green has had. And so those were all part of it, but certainly each of them contributing to what is certainly something that perhaps has a devastating impact on this Warriors season, headed back to Golden State for Game 3, down 2-0.
This is the beauty, as I've learned over 2 seasons of NBA Countdown, of having Woj at the ready. We've had questions all morning long, and there are the answers to them. Specifically, the escalation of the act. We said, well, how about Sabonis starting it? There's the answer to it. It is an escalation of the act. How about the theatrics on the court? Did that factor in? Woj says, yes, it did. The history here, and we just showed you on the screen some of the examples of that history involving Draymond Green. So I know that this was late last night, Woj, and it is very early in the morning, but what sorts of reaction are you hearing from the teams themselves or anywhere else this morning?
Certainly the Warriors, one word, livid. And they were certainly didn't agree with the one-game suspension. I think they were surprised at it. No question about that. They certainly went through this in the finals with Cleveland, losing Draymond Green for a game in 2016. But they're going to have to live with it. Appeals don't really, there's really nowhere to go with an appeal in these situations. And the Sacramento Kings, listen, they know what they're walking into in Game 3 on Thursday night. Mike Brown having coached in Golden State, this team having, looked at that Golden State organization as a model, as something they aspired to. There's a lot of connections between that Golden State organization and the Sacramento Kings, and certainly up 2-0, having to go on the road now. They know even without Draymond Green, this is going to be a really difficult task in Game 3. But I think there was surprise last night. I think there were a lot of people who believed perhaps that the ruling on the court was going to stand. But it took the league a while yesterday to get to all the interviews in this. I know they talked to Sabonis earlier in the day. They talked to the Warriors people later in the day. Now, I don't know what the conversation was between Draymond Green and the league office, but one thing the league office does want to hear in a case like this, a situation like this, is a recognition that the act was wrong, that there was some remorse there. I don't know whether Draymond Green expressed that or not with the league office, but it would be important that you do that when they are deciding on whether, again, it's perhaps just a fine and you play Game 3 versus suspension. But you look at on the court right there with Draymond Green before he left the floor, that was absolutely a part of this decision, I'm told.
I can fill in two of the blanks there for you that Woj brings up. One of the pieces about whether he was apologetic or not, we have discussed this morning that certainly in the immediate aftermath he was not, that we wondered if that would be a factor in all of this. His comments after it happened, well, I had nowhere to put my leg. I'm not graceful. What was the word he used? Flexible enough to not land on him. So, again, to Woj's point, we don't know specifically what he said in the interview. We know what he said to the media after the game. And then the other part of it, as far as an interview with Sabonis, I should point out that Sabonis is currently listed as questionable for that game with a bruised sternum. So, Woj, stay close by. But the information is extraordinary, and there you have everything. Again, the one word, livid. The Warriors are livid by this decision. Monica, you just heard that whole conversation. What's your reaction?
I understand why the Warriors would be livid. I think rational consumers can understand how we landed at this suspension by the league. But again, I continue to maintain I was okay with how the game played out and the penalties that were dealt out in the course of that basketball game. We brought it up earlier in the show. I can't remember which one of us said it, but at what point have you cleared your record, so to speak, right? Like, I don't know how Draymond can show that there was growth. Obviously, this is a literal step back in the wrong direction.
Literally.
If we're going to account for someone's past history, which I get, how do they show growth? So, all right, here we are.
Repeat offender.
That's
a big
fair.
part of this.
That's
Clearly,
fair.
the league had that in mind. And you know, to what Woj was saying, you know, I was told that there was a lack of recognition and remorse for the action. And that's a big part of it as well, is that at some point, in whether it's your post game or whether it's when you are interviewed by the league, is to at least say, yeah, I shouldn't have done it. You know, like have some type of accountability, which clearly he did not have from what I've been told. So all of this leads to going back again to repeat offender, a history of it, and make an example of you. Fines don't work. We're going to make you, it's going to hurt your team, and that's going to hurt you more.
You know, the league has, and I will just say, channeling through Woj. So the league wasn't speaking to me. They spoke to Woj, and then he spoke to me. But he answered all the questions I had, which was, well, how about Sabonis starting it? Well, their answer to that via Woj is, he escalated it. He started, that's like a shove, and now you throw a punch. It's not okay. I get it. The theatrics afterwards, the more I watch that video, look, that isn't Reggie Miller making the choke sign. I understand it. He is engaging more directly with people. It does feel more confrontational. It does feel more like something that could escalate to a place that we all desperately don't want it to. And so I do understand that. My perspective on it, the more I think about it, is sort of shifting in that direction. And then his history, I do think it is reasonable. 30 years ago, I was hosting talk shows in Chicago, D. Wood, and there was a very famous moment where Dennis Rodman kicked a sideline cameraman. I'm not sure how well everyone will remember this, but there was a gentleman who was, you know, shooting the game. He had a camera. And he was, I don't recall if he was for the network or if he was just a news reporter, but he's shooting the game. And Rodman sort of goes off the court and he lands on him and he kicks him quite hard. And he was suspended heavily for it. And one of the reasons for it given was his past history of transgressions. You're a former athlete. Does that seem right to you? Should that past history come into play when the league makes decisions like this?
I think across any sports league, once you have a label attached to you, it follows you. It's going to follow you the rest of your career. And Draymond Green in this particular situation, again, I keep saying it, Green. Like, the whole stump thing, I don't even think that really factored into the suspension. I think everything after that, to me, factored into the suspension. You get teed up. You start making all of these gestures. You're ramping up the crowd. You know, you're taunting the crowd. And then the commissioner's sitting right in the stand. To him, he's looking at this whole thing, and he's saying to himself, Draymond is making a mockery of this situation. This is not something that you can make a mockery of. We teed you up, okay, just like we teed Sabonis up, and now you're amping up and juicing up the crowd in a big-time nationally televised game. Is that what we want in this particular situation? Do we need more gasoline poured onto the fire from Draymond Green? No, we don't. And so I think that's where the league office stepped in and said, you know what? Like you said, Alan, the whole show, we're going to do to you what hurts players the most. We're going to remove you from the court because money is not going to affect it. Playing time affects players and their behavior moving forward.
You know what? I hate taking this to football, but what bothers me about the situation is that now in this game, in a pivotal game, a must-win game for the Warriors, they don't have one of their star guys. I understand you can say, well, it's Draymond's fault that he won't be playing the game. I get that. But when you see even in the Super Bowl, when you see a holding call and you're like, did the refs make the right decision? Well, like technically by the letter of the law, yeah, that was holding. But in that critical situation, the fan in you is sort of like, you don't want other things affecting a potential outcome of a game of that magnitude. So for the Warriors, I get, as Woj was saying, I get why they are livid, because it seemed like this situation was resolved with the ejection, with the technicals. Okay, now we move on. Now we're in this hole. We need this game. We need him.
So clearly, Monica, to Kmart's point, the league is sending a significant message because they know how much is at stake here. They understand that if they lose this game 3, the Warriors are essentially done. No team has ever come back from 3-0 in an NBA playoff series before. So they understand the severity of the punishment that they are levying here, and they're comfortable with the message that it sends.
Yeah, and actually, Kmart, as you were speaking, I'm listening, and I think not just the message that they're sending macro, but also in this particular series, which has been physical, right? And so if this were to go without the suspension, I would be curious to see what the tenor of Game 3 would look like. And it still may very well be chippy, but the feel was an interesting point that you made, and I think that does apply to this series that has been physical.
Sacramento has been very physical in the first 2 games and have gotten away with a lot of things, which you could also, if you're the Warriors, say led to this. So Game 3's officiating is going to be very interesting.
And there will be a Game 4. So we know that. The one thing we know for certain, there will be at least a Game 4. So Draymond will play again in the series one way or the other. Let me give the final word to Woj here. Is there anything that we should clean up or add to the conversation for the audience?
Yeah, I think even one more factor, while Draymond Green is egging on the crowd, hasn't left the court yet, Sabonis is still laying on the floor. And if he had been seriously injured, certainly it would have looked even worse. He had x-rays that night, and then another round of them yesterday, diagnosed with a bruised sternum. They're calling him questionable for Game 3. I think he's expected to play, but he's sore. I think there were some problems just breathing easily that night. And so if Sabonis had been seriously injured and all of this was going on with Draymond Green on the floor, certainly that would have made the situation look even worse. So a lot of smaller factors that played into what was a very significant decision. Draymond Green suspended for Game 3 at Golden State on Thursday night.
That's extraordinary reporting. And again, that is Woj getting up super early in L.A. and racing to a camera to do this for us.